How do you think photography affects people?
Uh, it. That's a tough one. I don't know. You like to think that it resonates with a person, whether it's a pretty flower or it's a still life of something. You like to think that they'll like, oh, I really like that. Or I mean, even places that I've photographed and they look like, oh, I've been there. I love that place. I love Chicago. I love Rome, whatever it is. And so there's a connection between that person viewing the image and myself.
Photography is a really unique form of art, not for what it does, but rather how it accomplishes this. For essentially all of time, we have been creating still visual art, and we use that as a way of conveying our thoughts or our experiences. But what made photography so revolutionary is that rather than using ink or using paints, it used light to capture images. And it captured these images at a level of detail that was previously exclusive to the human eye.
Video has kind of made a big scene, and that's kind of a new thing. But photography is where it's at. I mean, an image can say so much just by looking at it, where when and I'm just being super biased, but when you have to watch a video, whether it's 5 seconds, amount of time to get a story through, but you can technically look at an image and it can tell a story like that. And that's what I need to do. I need to capture the essence of a story with a click of click of a button, and yeah.
The camera obscura is what we recognize as the very first camera, but it's unclear exactly who invented it. Essentially, the way that these cameras worked was that you would take a large box and you would cut a small hole into the side of it, and when light passed through this hole, it would create a projection on the inside of what was on the outside of the box. Unfortunately, though these were fun, they didn't really serve much of a purpose because they were unable to produce permanent images. But this is where Nicephore Niepce comes in.
After the age of the camera obscura, the next big moment in camera history came with a Frenchman named Joseph Nicephore Niepce. Niepce was born in 1765 and was fascinated by light and the camera obscura. Niepce is credited with taking the first photograph of all time. He took a photograph of the view from outside his window. He used a simple camera to do this that he developed in 1816. The photo itself was paper coated with silver chloride. This simple device was able to capture the negative images.
As simple as it is, cameras today are based off of the same principle that he used back in the late 1800s. And that's fascinating to me. I mean, the lens, light going through the lens, capturing an image, whether it be film or digital, was the same idea that he did back in the 1800s. So yeah, it's still being used in more advanced.
Next, I will be talking about the Giro daguerreotype. This type of camera was the first camera to be manufactured in quantity. Dating back to 1839, this camera was named after the inventor Louis Jacques Mande Daguerre. To make the image referred to as the daguerreotype, the camera polishes a sheet of silver-plated copper, giving it a mirror-like finish. From there, it's treated with fumes that make the surface light-sensitive. The image goes through a few more processes before producing a positive or negative with a slight tarnish around the edges. These types of images were used from 1840 to 1850. The body of the camera itself was sturdy to protect the extremely vulnerable plate inside. The housing for the camera was typically styled as an open model or a folding case.
A revolutionary technique developed by Henry Fox Talbot in the 1830s was known as calotype. Calotype is a process in which a sheet of paper is covered with silver chloride. The paper is then exposed to light in a camera obscura. The areas covered in light from the camera obscura become dark, creating a negative image. The negative image is then covered in gallic acid to develop the picture. Gallic acid increases the speed of the chemical reaction in the image. With this technique, it reduced the time of development from 1 hour down to 1 minute. That's a huge difference. On top of this, the negative image created could be duplicated by contact with another piece of sensitized paper. The ability to duplicate an image with the calotype technique was a distinct advantage of the daguerreotype process and a huge contribution to photography.
Not every camera functions exactly the same, but on a fundamental level, most of the technology used in the image capturing process is pretty universal. From the moment you press the shutter button, light is filtered through a glass lens, which exposes either a piece of film or a sensor to light at very specific levels, producing an initial image.
I mean, obviously the big thing is digital. Digital started coming around. I really did not want anything to do with it. I kicked and screamed and held on to film because that was where it was, and that was the true photography. So I slowly moved into digital, and looking back, I wouldn't have done much different. You know, we moved forward regardless of whether I wanted to or not. And so I probably maybe not would have had a bad attitude about it, I guess. But I can't think of one shooting the way I shoot now with digital to film. I mean, I was at the soccer game last night and I shot 700 images, 800 images. So multiply that by 36. How many rolls of film does that? That's a few rolls of film, and I wouldn't get that back until 2 or 3 days from now, and I wouldn't get prints from 4 or 5 days. So digital photography has changed dramatically, but even digital is still basic principle of, I call it old school, but basic photography. Even if you look at the, I can show you cameras that they just like cars. The Model T had, 1 or 2 gears and 4 wheels, and it moved. So camera, it has basic same idea from the very beginning, but just better features and more features. I did a photo shoot this morning, and I gave the images to the designer, graphic designer, 30 minutes after the photo shoot, and he had a mock-up of the magazine ready to go to press. And so within 2 hours of shooting, we're moving ahead to go to press of a magazine, where we would not have done that 25 years ago, 20 years ago. What's changed, society has changed more than photography changing, and people, I think photographers have moved with society. Back in the day, it was just straight up portraiture, and taking pictures of people, and you'd get some landscapes, but there wouldn't be much marketing stuff. Well, then with more marketing, you needed images to market your piece, and so they would take pictures of the product, and then with sports, you have to take pictures to say who won, and take newspaper, website, whatever, photo of an image with Ohio State beats Michigan. Back in 2000, I don't even remember what it was, but once I show, you might not, I don't know if you see it really well, but I shot a concert of Bono, or not Bono, U2, for at U2.com. I was asked to shoot that for their website, and so that's kind of like a big deal. So that would be the one thing that sticks out to me.
There's a pretty common saying about a picture being worth 1,000 words. And while I think that's a pretty silly cliche that we overuse a lot, I also think that there's a lot of truth to that. It's really interesting how a photograph can tell us so much about a scene or about a topic without really any kind of instruction. And our brain, using only contextual evidence, is able to apply meaning to that situation. This isn't universally true, but for the most part, when you're looking at a picture, no one's there telling you how you're supposed to read it. And you're left with the freedom to interpret it based on how it speaks to you as an individual.
I think it's huge. I mean, again, I'm biased. I've done video, and I like it. I watch TV, I watch movies, but you go to print, you go to Instagram, you go to Twitter, and you see images. It's never going to go away.
I also think that photography is special because it's limited by its realism. A lot of other art forms are focused on creating something that we've never seen before, or trying to find the next big idea, but photography can only represent things that already exist, and it's based on our experience. And so I think that creates a level of relatability that isn't always found in every other form of art.
It may change, it may continue changing, but it's never going to go away. There still will be print, there still will be images on the wall. How it gets from beginning to end may be different, but there'll still be still images.
Mm-hmm.